you, I'm Evelyn Fernandez Ketchum, and I'm Vice President of Continuing Education and Workforce Development. Quiero darle la bienvenida a Eugenio María de Hostos Community College y quiero darle las gracias por compartir con nosotros en esta celebración, the special celebration del Rey del Timbal, Tito Puente Centennial. I am truly humbled and honored, and it is my great pleasure to be here to introduce to you our presiding moderator for today's discussion, Joe Conzo, and as he would like to remind us, senior. A one-of-a-kind historian that has worn many hats throughout his career. And as Joe Conzo Sr. will tell you, he holds a PhD defined by what his family and friend Anita Antoinette would like to say, a PhD in poverty, hunger, and determination. Joe has been the producer of many recordings by iconic Latin artists for prestigious labels such as Sony Music for musicians of great stature like Celia Cruz, Rey Barreto, Eddie Palmieri, and La India, to name a few. Joe has an unparalleled collection of live Latin music, recordings that would surprise and pleasantly delight even the most knowledgeable person in the music industry. But Joe Conzo Sr. shares his collection and knowledge of Latin music through his lectures by educating others about the global impact of Latin music and Latin jazz at places such as Lincoln Center, the Smithsonian, Stony Brook, Yale, the New School, and the best part is that we have him here at our beloved Hostos Community College under Continuing Education and Workforce Development. In our division, we offer the history of Latin music and Latin jazz at no cost to the community, something that's a seminar that is graciously supported by Bob Sancho at Ron Scare. But Joe's commitment to preserving our culture through music is unmatched. When I met Joe, he said to me, "Nena, this is about making sure that our children understand and learn about salsa and not the one you cook with." So attending Joe's lectures is an experience. It's like traveling on a time machine. During his lectures, you're exposed to an impressive archive of music records and video recordings that only Joe has. The seminar covers artists such as Mario Bauza, Cachao, Celia Cruz, Tito Rodriguez, and of course, Tito Puente, to name a few. And the seminar brings together people from other parts of the country, California, Colorado, Nevada, Florida, Massachusetts, New Jersey. We even get participants that tune in from Costa Rica and Ecuador. One of my favorites is that in the seminar, we get Joe, and then he draws other musicians that, like Joe, share their lived experiences with Latin music and Latin jazz. I mean, their lived experiences. When you participate in the seminar, you are transported and you're like, oh my God, I wish I was born during that era. I did not get to go to the Palladium. And as Joe would tell me, well, you went to Latin Quarters, but you went at the wrong time. So you feel like you missed something, but you learn. At times, participants also include Eggy Castillo, percussionist and professor at Berkeley, our very own Felix Arroyo, director of Hostos Cultural Arts Center, and I'm just going to name a few: Nelly Calderon, Francisco Calderon, Joseph Powell, Debbie Mercado, B. Gonzalez, Anna Howard, and at times Hostos matriculated students join as well. So I think we can all agree that Joe Conzo Sr. is the walking encyclopedia for any and all facts about El Rey del Timbal. I remember Joe explaining, Tito Puente is not only a rey of the timbales, he was also a composer, an arranger and conductor of music, a band leader, and Tito played multiple instruments and the first to play vibes in Latin music. In addition, Tito Puente performed for 4 presidents at the White House, 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. So we all acknowledge Joe as Tito Puente's longtime publicist and confidant. Joe's memories with Tito Puente are included in the book Mambo Diablo, My Journey with Tito Puente, an internationally acclaimed text with deep insights into the dexterity of El Rey del Timbal. Joe Conzo Sr. has been central to keeping Tito Puente's legacy alive through many projects during and after his passing. Of great importance was his role as chairman of the Tito Puente Scholarship Fund, which benefited hundreds of students interested in pursuing careers in music and the performing arts. Joe has also served as director of the Tito Puente Legacy Project, housed here at Hostos. A tireless advocate for the appreciation of culture and preservation of Tito Puente for 5 decades. We surely could not have had a better master of ceremony with us today. Please join me in welcoming Joe Conzo Sr.
No se puede decir más nada.
I don't know what she was talking about. I don't know who this guy Tito Puente is. I know Ernest Anthony Puente. Thank you, Evelyn. It's been a pleasure and welcome everybody. I have been blessed. I did wear many hats, and those of you that have my book will see the hats that I've worn. And I'm here to talk about it. Most people look at me and they don't realize that I've been through a lot. I served 3 years, I did time in Korea, I did drugs, I did cocaine, I did a lot of things, but I'm here to talk about it. And most important, I'm here to preserve our legacy, our culture. I'm a firm believer in culture. And until we take it upon ourselves to preserve our culture, we're lost without our culture. I'm not a politician, but you see what that yo-yo in Florida is doing. He even banned Roberto Clemente's book. I mean, how dare you do a thing like that? And then now he's taking on the mouse. I mean, give me a break. Anyway, most important, we're here to celebrate my good friend, who I lost almost 23 years ago. And for those of you who keep reading, Tito Puente died May 31st, 2000. Please correct those that keep saying the same thing. He did not die June 1st, 2000. You see, another college is doing a tribute to him, but they keep saying June 1st. I don't correct nobody anymore. If you don't know about your culture, and if you don't know about the greatest, one of the greatest, if not the greatest musician of the 20th century, shame on you. And without further ado, I want to introduce a young lady who I've known for many, many years, and we shared many adventures with Tito together. Ladies and gentlemen, the moderator of this event, Miss Aurora Flores, who's a producer, a writer, composer. A lot of people don't know that Aurora Flores is also a musician. Aurora, where are you? Come up here, baby.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. Yeah, we go back. Tito was one of the first people that I met, that I interviewed. I was a young reporter with Latin New York. And I was also a musician. I did my first album at 15 with the Manhattan Borough White Orchestra. I had been playing violin and bass. And in Town Hall, we did a big, it was a 60-piece symphony, and there were 10 bass players. I was first chair. And I must have been this big, and but we did that, and then I landed in Latin New York. I'm about 20 years old, and my first assignment is to interview Tito Puente. And Tito Puente at that time was my mother's music. This was music I grew up with. My mother had the album. She had Tito Puente, she had Rodriguez, she had Machito, she had Cortijo, she had the classics. And of course, me growing up, I grew up with that. I learned how to dance, listening to those records and standing on my mother's feet. And she would teach me the steps. And for me that to be my first assignment, I took it seriously. And I went to the New York Library, the one on 42nd Street, and I just wanted to know everything I could about Tito Puente. And I did. And then they told me I had to go. The interview was in Ralph Mercado's office at 9 o'clock at night. So anyway, that interview opened the whole new world for me. And Tito was very impressed with my questions, and he would call me the college kid. And I remember he was like my mentor. He made it like his personal assignment to protect me and tell me who to hang with and who to not hang with and who to be careful with. But I think what he liked the most, that I understood his music. That I was so young for him. He was like 51 when I met him. And I'm like 19 going on 20. You guys know that's like old back then. And you probably think it's old now, and now I'm thinking, wow, I wish I was 51 again. But anyway, he taught me so much, not only about the music, but about the culture. And then what was around me, and he told me, don't let these guys bully you. He said, you can stand up for your own. And he would tell me, you're controversial, keep being controversial. And he was so great that way. And he was correct. So we have some people here. I don't want to go on about my experience about Tito Puente, but we have a collaboration. We want to talk about Tito Puente's history, his legacy. Why was he the greatest? And I want to call up now our panelists. And we have, I see right there, Frankie Morales, who was his singer for his last 10 years. Frankie Morales was his singer. So come on up, Frankie. We have Oreste Abrantes. Oreste, he's part of the Latinx. And he met Tito Puente when he was 11 years old on the set of Gala Gala Island. And he met Tito Puente there, and it just changed his world. And then, of course, we have the guy that Tito Puente used to send to substitute for him. And he was young at that time, too. Nicky Marrero. Come on up. He's coming.
Oh, is this way? So,
Yes.
musical chairs.
Musical chairs. Okay, musical chairs. So let's start a little bit with Frankie.
Really?
Yeah, because I'm also interested, because I remember seeing you one time on the steps of the courthouse here on 161st Street. And I remember I was one of the judges for the Daily News that was having a Mambo dance contest. And that was the first time I saw you singing with Tito Puente. You guys were on the stairs, and there was a whole Mambo contest going on. So my first question to you is, being a musician, like, how did that happen? How did you meet Tito? How did you come in? Because you're one of the younger generations, and here you are being, with Tito Puente.
Well, we would like to welcome everybody for showing up, and thank you for coming. Thank you for the question, that gig that you saw me at, that was my first gig with Tito Puente.
Really?
Yes, it was. I know you want to know how I got that gig with Tito. I was recommended by Mr. Ralph Mercado. I used to always call Ralphie's office, and I was always in touch with Juan Toro, that always worked with Ralph Mercado.
And well, you were a musician, you were playing already?
Well, yeah, because I was always, I started at the age young. I sang Coro with Hector Lavoe. the age of 12, 16 years old. I was doing coro with Tito Nieves at the time. I left Tito Nieves, and I was always in touch with Rafi. Who is available, who's looking for a singer, who's looking for a corita. So Antoro told me Tito Puente is looking for a singer. So I said, okay, I've always listened to his music at home. So he brought the information to Ralph Mercado. And Ralphie said, Frankie Morales, perfect for Tito Puente. So I started listening to his music. The first gig with Tito here at the courthouse right here, Centro, Grand Concourse. And I started singing. And all I hear now is, all I see is Johnny Rodriguez coming to me and saying, this is a schedule. So, it was an honor being with Tito. And I was with him for 10 years. I recorded 2 live recordings at Berlin. One won the nomination, which was Dance Mania 98. And then Mambo Berlin won the Grammy. And then the last one we did with Mr. Eddie Palmero, Obra Maestra, that also won the Grammy.
The last album that Tito Puente made.
Yes.
Yeah. I just want to say, we do have here in the audience Ralph Mercado's daughter, Damaris, who's here in the neighborhood. And I know when I spoke to her, she said that Tito Puente was like an uncle to her. She remembers him since she had the use of reason, He was always in the home. And let me ask you, after that first gig, and then Johnny Rodriguez comes to you with the schedule, how old were you?
I think when I was with Tito, I was probably in my early 30s.
How did you feel?
It felt great because, I felt like I was on top of the world. Because, what more can you ask for than being with Tito Puente? Now you know that I was married, I had kids, I was rarely home, I always worked, which, a lot of people, musicians know that I work. I've never lived off the music. But I was always working, and Tito was very a person that he knew that I worked, and he would wait for me, not wait for me, but he would say, okay, you leave from work at this time, they will get my flights to leave at this time. And I thank Tito and I thank Ralph Mercado. I thank Ralph Mercado a lot for my career. Ralph was like a father, a godfather, and he always looked out. So, but when he offered me the gig with Tito, I felt like I was in heaven.
Would you say that time in your career with Tito was sort of a milestone in your career? What kind of things did you learn from Tito?
Yeah, because remember, Hector at the age of 16. My first gig with Hector Lavoe was at Madison Square Garden. Backing up Cheo Feliciano and Hector. A lot of people don't know that. And all I tell people is, just read my press sheet. Imai Miranda grew up in my mother's house. He sang with my brother's doo-wop group. Him and his mother and my mother were like this. He used to change my diapers. Imai, Peter Conde, Cita Rodriguez, my cousin. Being with Hector, also, I know we were Puente, but being with Hector, I backed up in Maya Rivera, Peggy Rodriguez. I sang with Joe Cuba, recorded with Luis Ramirez. I did coro with Tito Nieves, which was when Tito Nieves was really good with that, I always love you. But then after Tito Nieves, I was doing coro with Tito Nieves, and then I went with Puente. Tito Puente, Tito Nieves fired me. But then I told Tito, it was so funny because there was a gig that Tito Nieves was performing and Puente was closing. So Tito saw me show up And he tells me, "What are you doing here?" And I told him, "I'm here with the real Tito." You know, and that's a true story, you know. But, you know, and also being with Tito Nieves, you know, he worked a lot. I did 2 years with Tito, and I was doing coro with him. It was great. But Tito Puente was like, you know, we traveled all around the world. We went to places that no band or no artist
Had ever gone before.
We did a gig overseas somewhere, and they brought us in at nighttime. And it was Tito Puente and Celia Cruz. They brought us, it's like if he was the president, you know, of the United States. I mean, what he was always treated, it was amazing.
If there's one thing that you would pull out of that decade that you were with him, one thing that really, that taught you something, that changed you, that did something as an artist, as a musician, as a singer, what would that be? What could you?
He was very disciplined. He made sure that when you sang, you played his music, you respected. You know, right now, I'm like that. I got my band, Mambo Orchestra. I've been having my band since the year 2002. Tito passed away. Tito was supposed to be a special guest on my album. And the whole album, Mambo Times, was recorded by the Tito Puente Orchestra. That's why that band, that's why the recording sounds like that. Great musicians, Jose Madera, Johnny Rodriguez, Sonny Bravo, you know, Mario Rivera, all those guys. But Tito, the thing with Tito was discipline, you know, and I'm like that now. You know, I go overseas and they ask me for Tito's music, and I make sure that I don't leave that rehearsal until that music is played the way Tito Puente would play it. And I'm playing tomorrow at Swing 46, and they're doing Hell to the King for Puente. I rehearsed last night, and I rehearsed all those songs. El agua limpia todo, papá quiere, guaguancó, Margarito, tremendo guaguancó. I mean, these are great classic tunes.
That is a great example of what a great man, and Tito Puente, you know, people looked at him like he was always clowning around, he was always making jokes. I mean, he played for 4 presidents, and Carter, wow, he was like, I mean, Tito could be like a little boy, like reckless, like all of that, but then when it came to the music, you couldn't play. I mean, you couldn't mess around. He was very strict, he was very disciplined. Let me ask you, Oreste, you were a young percussionist, and you're studying at Boyce Harbor, and you're studying with Amanda and some of these other percussionists, so you already knew who Tito Puente was as a young boy. So tell us, what did you think when they told you were gonna go on the show, that Nickelodeon show, Gala Gala Island?
Well, when I started there at the Harbor with Johnny Almendra, may he rest in peace, so he was my first teacher at 7 years old at the Harbor. And I was playing before that. My mom always used to play a lot of music, everything, every Sunday, invite the family, food, everything, and it's salsa, mambo, cha-cha, Tito Puente, Tito Nieves, Victor Manuel, Oscar de Leon. I mean, you name it, I mean, just salsa all over the place. I mean, I was born like pretty much right in it, at 3, 4 years old already, taking away my mom's maracas, because she's la maraquera del Bronx. So you look like I said del Bronx, if you ever see that, that's my mom. Yeah, you see her around there with her gorrita, boricua, everything with the maracas, playing all, that's my mom. And she, yeah, you know, and my mom, you know, she's the main reason why I was able to come into the school at 7 years old. We saw a commercial one day, we cleaned the house, and my mom was cooking, and she sees a commercial, Celia Cruz, Tito Puente, school here at 104th and 5th Avenue, in Manhattan, New York. And I'm like, wow, you know, te voy a llevar allá. I'm gonna take you over there. I'm like, okay, I'll go, you know, I would love to. I hope it's not expensive. You know, and me at 7, I ain't have any money. My mom's like, no, te voy a llevar, don't worry about it. And I go, and I meet Don Ramon Rodriguez, who was director at the time of the Harbor, Johnny Almendra, Louis Balzo, Jose Madera from Mambo Legends, and they were all teaching there Chacho Swartz, bass player, Pablo Mayor, who I work with today, a piano player who's the pianist of Orquesta Broadway. You see Orquesta Broadway? The pianist, Colombiano. He's one of my teachers as well, and I grew up there all my life from 7 years old to I was like 15, 16, 17, taking classes every day from Monday through Friday, taking classes from right after school. At 2 or 3 o'clock, I'm out of school. At 4:30 is my first class. 5:30 is the workshop. 7:30 was the class at thing, and 8 o'clock to like 10 o'clock was the big band workshop with Louis Balzo, usually on Mondays or Thursdays, and I'm there peeking in, trying to get in the band, and you know, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, and on, and when I found out one day I'm taking a class with Johnny Almendra, and he tells me, listen, so next week we're gonna go to a show, Gala Gala Island. I'm like, Gala Gala Island? Yeah, I know that show. I've seen the big yellow monk, the frog, and everything, and I've seen a few episodes. I like the show. And yeah, we're gonna go. We're gonna talk about clave and talk about salsa. I was like, all right, cool. So I would love to go. We go, and there's breakfast spread out, bagels, etc. We're eating, and Johnny's there. I'm with Camilo Molina, who's another percussionist who we were raised, yes, you know, right? We grew up together in the harbor too. He plays now, he's the official timbalero for Eddie Palmieri. If you see now, Camilo, he's a very cool guy, very awesome, very talented person, and we grew up together with Johnny Almendra taking classes, and we're there in Gala Gala Island. Show everything, special episode, and we're eating breakfast, and Johnny's there, we're talking, and next thing you know, you hear the elevator open up, and you see Tito Puente, it was a white, I think it was a white blazer, you know, his white fro, and he's just coming in, and he's just walking, and I'm eating, and I just look, and I'm just...
You froze.
Like, I'm like, wait, I'm looking with the bagel and everything, and I'm here, and I do one of those.
You know who he was.
Yeah, I grew up with his music. I knew who Tito Puente was, Celia, El Canario, Gilberto Santa Rosa, and I don't know if anybody of you that was there at Carnegie Hall when he did the album at Carnegie Hall, Gilberto Santa Rosa. I was actually one of the children, one of the kids that opened the band. It was me, Camilo as well, again, and another percussionist, Edgar, who we were playing congas, bongos, and timbales, doing like a warm called jam, and then Gilberto comes in with his band and starts singing the whole thing with the symphony.
I was at that concert, I saw you.
Oh man, it was one of the best days of my life, and I was there in Carnegie Hall in 94, 95, and then
But you saw Tito,
yes.
and you froze.
Yes, I froze right there. I'll go back to the story. But I froze there. I'm there eating breakfast, and I'm just looking at Tito, and I'm like, inside, I'm one of those kids that's like jumping all over the place, all over the walls, on the bed. But there I'm like, okay, that's Tito Puente, calm down. And this is me, like literally, I can remember like it was yesterday. You know, like right now, as I'm thinking about it, I remember like it was yesterday how I felt. It was so much emotion making me want to like flip the table, like, it's Tito, oh my God, you know, but I'm like, okay, let me calm down and relax, right? I'm eating the breakfast, he comes to get the breakfast, he don't say anything, he's like, hello, and he just eats his breakfast, and I'm getting closer. And I'm getting closer, and I want to say hello, but I don't want to intrude, you know, I don't want to like, hey, how you doing? My name is, and I want to play, Frankie, you know, I don't want to be one of those. I wanted to be more like, you know, you just eat breakfast and, hey Tito, good morning, you know, and Tito's, hey, how you doing? You know, like real up, like very presentable, very just energetic, and I'm like, hi Tito, you know, like that, very, you know, just nervous what to say. I didn't know what to say. If I should say something, should I say something? And I just was like, okay, let me just get the bagel and he ended up sitting next to us when we was sitting on the table. I was like, oh snap, okay. Hi Tito, he's like, hey, how you doing? How you guys are feeling? This and this and that. And he was just telling us stories. I don't know specifics, but like I know we was there for like at least half hour to an hour just eating breakfast. We even forgot the breakfast when we were just talking, and next thing you know, they say, oh, 5 minutes to the stage. I was like, oh my God. And we were so excited to the breakfast, but it was a really cool experience to have Tito there. I was like mind blown. It was total experience. You know,
How
crazy.
did that affect you as a percussionist?
As a percussionist, that told me that there's possibility, there's opportunity. Because there's not many people in the world to have the opportunity to meet someone like Tito, and for me to be there at that moment, not even know he's coming, and be right here, like with Frankie, with Nicky, God bless you, like just here, being here right now, like as I'm like, wow, you know, like I got called up, we're doing a panel for Tito Puente. I'm like, what? Well, I got this story, I got this, yes. come in, we're gonna talk about it. I was like, wow, you know, so, I mean, it's a total honor. And to be at my age, that there's people that's even older that has done things, or like for me to be at my age, to be able to do these things and be a part of this and be a part of with these legends, musicians, talent, to be able to travel and perform with them as well. With Tito, with the clave in that episode, like it was just total fun. The way he is, everything, that's how he was. Literally, okay, vamos a tocar el mambo, 1, 2, and 1, pow, and just start playing. And I'm like, okay, you gotta just keep up. You didn't want to be behind. You didn't want him to play and give you that face like, what are you doing? You know, like you wanted him to look at you and smile, like, yeah, you know, like one of those. You know, so I try to strive for that. You know, and when we were playing, he was explaining clave in the episode, and I'm there. I don't know if I was playing maracas or clave or one of the instruments, but we were all playing instruments. Mr. Johnny Almendra, may rest in peace, helped me out a lot too with everything I know. He was there curating us and helping us out with the instruments and helping Gala Gala Island's family, the frog, everything, getting to know Salsa and how to play. I mean, it was totally awesome for me to be there in that episode. From watching it to now being a part of it, and then now being a part of it with Tito, was like 3 levels of like excitement, just beyond, you know, so.
Well, I do have to say that Oreste today is one of the first call musicians, percussionists. He started with my band Zon del Barrio when he was 19.
I was gonna get there too.
And and I do want to say that now he's been called by Oscar Hernandez, and he's officially going to be part of Spanish Harlem Orchestra.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Aurora, for opening that door at that time, because at that time I was like going to shows and, oh, I could play too. I could play, look at me, you know, like, call me up so I can play, you know, and I was like really excited just to play with a band and see somebody say, hey, look, next week we got a rehearsal, I want you to come in and we got a show and I want you to play and be in my band. But that hasn't happened for a while, and I'm doing classes with Ramon and we did the Harbor and all of this and performing and stuff like that. And then one day, Aurora was doing a rehearsal with her band. I'm like 18, 19 years old, and I don't know, she was switching the band or getting new members or trying new things or trying new sounds. And she asked the timbalero, Matthew Gonzalez, if you know him, Nelson Matthew Gonzalez, who's in Play also has played in many artists, many
Matthew, and
percussionists.
it was you, because I had to fire Pocholo after 2 months.
Oh my God, but
you came in.
I don't know what happened before that, but all I know, there was a seat that was empty that she told me all that thing.
I said, I want you. I don't care about names.
I don't know what happened, but
I wasn't one of the biggest names. I didn't want names because I didn't want problems.
Right.
And I said, and he can play.
Right.
Yes, come on. And
like,
it was great.
Literally.
It was like an educational thing too,
Right.
so it was great.
Right, Matthew told me, he's like, yo, listen, I'm in the band Aurora, she needs a conga player, you gotta come in and show her. I'm like, okay, cool, I'll come in. I don't know what we're playing, mind you, I don't know the set list, anything. I'm just coming in, he said, look, just play it, don't worry about it. I'm like, okay, fine. He's on timbales, I'm playing congas, right? I played with Frankie a few times as well, with his band on timbales, and that's a pleasure too. And that moment, right? I did like 2 tunes, and I said, all right, stop. Oreste, we got a gig this weekend, Flushing Town Hall, right there in Queens. That was my first gig, Flushing Town.
No.
It wasn't?
It was Broadway.
Broadway.
The Broadway Club.
Oh my God, you know.
For the gala.
You know, again.
And you had to be all dressed up.
Yes, which I was actually like this, but with a red shirt and a red tie, like a red and black tie.
Oreste actually got dressed because Tito Puente, you know, he was a
He was in a suit.
And he was always in a suit,
Right.
so in respect for Tito,
Of course, I thought of, you know.
you left the hip-hop clothes home.
The jeans and the shirts and all that. You know, next to Frankie and I said, Nicky, I gotta be, you know, gotta be good. You know, I'm representing Tito, you know, so gotta come in right. You know, but it's a total honor, it's a total pleasure. It's been a ride, and for me to be able to be a part of Spanish Harlem as well, and now actually we'll be performing here the 13th, May 13th. Spanish Harlem back in the Ray Barreto, he's talking about me. He's talking about me. Rey de la Paz, actually. We're gonna back him up, and it's a pleasure to be a part of that, and it's an honor. Thank God, thank you. Aurora, thank you again for
What would you
opening that
say
door.
was the most impactful thing that you've learned from Meeting Tito Puente and then later knowing his music, what would you say as a young percussionist, what you got out of that?
What I got out of that was maturity. Let me explain. Like at 11, you would expect me to, a kid, any kid, just, oh my God, it's Beyonce, it's Tito, it's Jay-Z, it's somebody, whoever it is, right? And you go crazy. It's like, oh my God, it's La India, it's somebody. It's like, oh, it's Frankie. Oh my gosh, can I get you a autograph? Nicky, oh, there's my timbal. Can you write the name on it? And I would have been one of those, I swear to God. But I like literally that day I froze, and that me being froze had me thinking that moment, just chill, don't go crazy. Let Tito be him and just relax. And I still remember that to this day. I was the most relaxed. I'm like this, acting like I knew him for 20 years. Next thing you know, we're talking for like an hour. And I mean, one of the best conversations. I don't know exactly what it was, but I know it was something so big because I still remember as if we're sitting right now in breakfast and everything. But it was so much going on. I don't know the specifics, but for me to be there was a total honor. To have Tito there talking and just we're eating and then we're just playing together, and I'm like, yo, I listen to this guy like every day. I listen to his albums. My mom was like, mira, ponga Tito Puente ahí para rumbear un rato, mess around, play some maracas, do something. So for me to be there, like to literally be with Tito was a total influence, both percussion-wise and even as a band leader, because I also became a band leader too. It was one day, they were talking about, look, there's a band, we can't get this band last minute, all this. And I go, I can get the band, that's not a problem. I can get some musicians up. And one day I just made the band and made it happen. And then we ended up getting a gig here, Hostos with Aurora, right? And we did a 2-night opening night with Los Monstritos, which was myself and Jason Gonzalez and even Matthew Gonzalez as well, all through the inspiration of Tito as well, through playing percussion, being a total percussionist, a musician, an arranger, composer, to be able to be a band leader, to lead, right, to teach, right, which is something I do as well, and he's a main part of the reason why I do that. Tito's always been an influence, and to this day is from myself. Even for older, even the younger generation, even to this day,
One of the things I liked about that gig, we had included those 2 young ladies as well. And I do want to say this about Tito Puente. He did give great opportunities to women. I remember being a young girl, my mother brought home an album, Tito Puente backing up Carmen Mirabal. I remember it because she had this dress on that looked like a rainbow. And then after that, it was Tito Puente backs up Sophie. And then after that, of course, Celia, La Lupe. But I gotta say, in the 90s, someone sent me a tape, a cassette, Tito Puente with La India, doing these jazz tunes. And I gotta say, she was awesome. I've never heard her that good. It almost sounded to me like when Lady Gaga is with Tony Bennett. This was La India with Tito Puente. It was, and then, he had Millie P. There are videos online where Tito Puente's jamming with Sheila E. And I have to say, Tito Puente encouraged me at the beginning because here I am, I'm still in college, and I land in this Latin music world, which was like a testosterone club. And then it was in the 70s, it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but in that point it was sex, drugs, and salsa. So I'm landing in this thing, and I think one of the best things, Tito Puente saw how I was worried and upset with all this other stuff around me, but he was impressed with the questions. He said, this girl did her homework. And he said, look, you're not afraid of these guys. And he said, I like that. And he says, and you don't let them bully you. You're not afraid of them. And I wasn't starstruck either. And I wasn't starstruck about Tito. I saw him as one of my parents' idol. And for me, to have to interview him, I took that with so much respect. And when I saw his whole history on microfilm, here's a man who was born in East Harlem at a time when East Harlem was just developing. after 1898, after the Spanish-American War, after Puerto Rico was colonized. He's born in Harlem, and he takes, at that time, the Park Palace, the Park Plaza on 110th and 5th. He would go there with his sister. They had dance contests. They had galas. The Puerto Rican community was just coming up. There was La Liga de las Mujeres, El Club Mayagüezano. All of this was happening, and East Harlem was very united with West Harlem. In fact, the Harlem riots of 1935 started because a pharmacist, because all the businesses at that time was white-owned, they beat up a young Afro-Boricua, a young man like you, but he was 11 years old. That's when the NAACP came in, all of that came in. Tito had to be a young man seeing all this. And then he goes to the Navy, and he played trumpet, he played vibes, he played piano. And yes, he was a guy who could hang with kings and presidents, but he always said, and he always told this to students, that you had to learn the music, but he's always said, don't forget the street. You have to be in the streets. He was into those Central Park rumbas, and he was into, I mean, the first one to bring the bata drums into Latin music in 1962 with Julito Collazo was Tito Puente. So he brought in not only the conservatory, yes, let's have a hand for that. It was Tito Puente, the first one that did that. And it was Tito Puente because of the Schillinger method. The Schillinger method was sort of like a stenography for arrangers. And through the Schillinger method, I mean, he taught people like Gershwin, like all those guys who were very popular. And he learned that after the Army, through the GI Bill, he took lessons at Juilliard. But back then, Juilliard was not what we hear of today. Juilliard was in Harlem. It was in the Harlem YMCA on 135th Street. You paid, Manuel Kendall took lessons there. Many of them took lessons there. And there, Tito learned the Schillinger method. And although he didn't play that much Puerto Rican music, although he'd always play a bomba with Celia, and he'd always play bomba con La Lupe, when he was in Puerto Rico, and Imai Rivera was coming out of jail, and Cortijo didn't have a band. It was Tito Puente who sat with Cortijo, and the conguero told me in like 2 hours, Cortijo was telling him this is what he wanted, and Tito is jotting it down on the piano, and he did the whole arrangements for the band in like 2 hours. And then after that, he told Cortijo, use my band, because Cortijo didn't have a band. And in that album, Bienvenidos, if you listen to it, you can hear Tito Puente doing coro, because he also sang. So you can hear him doing coro, and he did this for Cortijo because they were boys. He did not charge him. This was the fraternity they had as band leaders. And to me, that was such a great story. So now I want to turn.
This is salsa.
This is salsa. That's right, this is salsa. And Cortijo told me that story too, and Marrero. I was lucky enough to sing with Cortijo and Marrero. And now we get to Nicky Marrero. Now, one of the things I did not know, Nicky Marrero was born and raised in the Bronx. Now his mother, that's right, and his mother used to have a record shop. So he grew up with all this music, but he grew up at a time when he was doing doo-wop in the hallways. He was in a band with Eddie Palmieri when you were, what, 13, 11, something like that? Anyway, tell us a little bit, growing up in the Bronx at that time, your mother has a record shop. When do you remember hearing about Tito Puente or knowing about Tito Puente and all of that?
Well, I mean,
The other way.
You can hear me, can't you?
yeah.
You can hear me. Here they are. Okay, what was the question? Oh, no.
Growing up in the Bronx.
Yes.
When was the first time you heard about Tito Puente? What did you think?
Well, what happens in my family, that there was a lot of music, a lot of musicians, and they used to come to the house and play for parties and stuff like that. And then, because of that, there was a lot of album buying. My parents, my mother especially, bought a lot of albums, and then my cousins, they were into a lot of the Latin music, of the salsa at that time, Mambo and that stuff. And there was a lot of listening, or dancing especially, dancing. So I was always interested in the kimbali sound and the soloing, because when they would play something, and I would ask who is it, and they would say, Tito Puente sound. And then I would look at the album cover, and I'd just stare at it and look at, and just try to picture this person, and wow, imagine to meet him, like what you were saying. And then one of the albums that was special for me was the top percussion album. Well, fortunate, because my mother had a record shop, that she always had access to getting albums, but rather, because that came out later, but my cousins and my brother also, they collected albums. And like I said, and I want to know about Tito Puente as much as I could, of course. I just loved dancing to the music. And then I would focus on his soloing. The soloing was superb for me. So
you would listen to that in the albums, his solos?
yeah, that really attracted me, because he had his own style, and it was very, very percussive. I mean, there was hardly spaces in between the notes. I mean, he was like, and always with the ideas, his phrasing. So I was very attracted to that. So the more and more that I listened to him, and especially loving his music and finding out who played with him, that was important. So I would imagine, wow, to see him one time or something like that. So we had, in Puerto Rican culture here in New York, we had our own vaudeville in different theaters. There would be shows. Milta Silva used to host those shows. Down to Puerto Rico, down to Jefferson Boulevard and Southern Boulevard, and different theaters. And you would have acrobats, you would have comedians, kind of team plus a band, and then you would have a band playing. So I remember that my father told me, "Oh, when is it at the Boulevard Theater?" I was a young kid, maybe about 11, around there.
You were 11?
Yeah, around there, yeah. So he takes me to the theater to see Tito Puente, and there was actually a movie first, and then it was a special situation where he was going to play with his band there, and it was sort of like it wasn't like a half hour or anything like that. He played like 2 tunes. I thought he was going to play all night. But anyway, so I'm sitting, and the movie's on, and I'm talking, oh, this is going to be over already. I want to see the band already. What's going on? And I felt like I'm going to the projection booth and going, hey, what's the matter? So anyway, so here comes, and he says, señores, y ahora, la orquesta. Now, they're behind a curtain. So, and I'm going, oh boy. And my father's looking at me going, and so all of a sudden, Tito Puente, and it opens up. And being, like I said, they was playing 2 tunes or something like that. The thing is that they all were standing like in a half moon, because he was already going to go somewhere else. So the thing is that when they started playing, I was like, oh. And the thing is that the person behind me, will you tell your son to sit down? And I was just, wow, it was unbelievable. Now what happens, I'm jumping now. The thing is, okay, so I I was still always interested in seeing more of this, but I was too young to go to the clubs or anything like that. But once I got to like in 13, 14, where I joined Willie Colon's group, the thing is that we opened up the big dances at Manhattan Center, Riverside Plaza, and then when Tito would be the headliner. And you had Ray Barretto, but the thing is that we would be the opening band. So that was my chance to see Puente. And I couldn't wait until he went on. And it was always exciting. And I was always waiting for his solo. Why doesn't he take a solo? So he didn't always take a solo. But when he did, it was, oh man, it's like, it was like taking a pill to relax me. But the thing is, it was so exciting to me. And the band, the precision and the notes and the singing and the different singers that he had, so Tito Puente. But the thing is also that when after this, I'm jumping because there's so much history in the bands that I've been with, but.
When was the first time that you got a chance to really talk to him and he got a chance to see you?
Well, I mean, what happens is that I imitated a lot of Puente. His facial expressions, how he stood, the phrasing of how he soloed. And I used to do shows with Larry Hollow. He would always want me to do the timbale show, so I would imitate all the timbales, well, most of the timbaleros. And he would leave for Puente for the last, because I would do Puente, like Puente is. And the thing is, I think there was moments where he saw me doing this, and he would look at me going, "You're a wise guy, huh? Huh? No, what? I mean, but he sort of enjoyed me in terms of those things. So, other than that, the thing is now, anytime that he was at the Village Gate, I would go. I mean, I would.
There's a video of you playing with him, you and Caco at the Village Gate.
Yeah, well, Caco also would go when Puente was playing too, because somewhere along the line, we're waiting for Tito to go. And I'm going, hurry up, show the finger, come on. So Caco also was when he saw me, who's first, Caco or me? Or not me? You gotta be crazy. But anyway, so we would, Puente would often call us up to play, to do solos with him.
And you guys substituted for him.
Yeah,
Tell me about that.
Then, because of the imitation that I would do of Puente, and the guys in the band, they used to also, when I would imitate him, or rather just play, the thing is, because I would play my own style, but I mean, then I would do him. And Puente looking at me, and then one of the guys would go, do Puente, do Puente. I said, oh no, he's going to get angry. But I would do it, and then he would come and solo with me, or me with it, that type of situation. But I was able to learn so much from him, and like Frankie said, he was very disciplined. He was better, but not yet. So he was very disciplined. And it's so amazing that then when at different occasions, depending on circumstances, he would let Jimmy Prisciuta, was the director, he would have somebody substitute for him, which not many could do. Playing the timbales for the band. So he would call Caco. And there's pictures of Caco playing with Tito Puente. And then, they would call me to play. They call Nicky, okay, because I got to do this. So I would go in and play with the band. And I would play like Puente, so sort of like fit like a glove. And then other than that, so that was a substitute part, especially there was different occasions, like I said. One of them was when Santito Colon died, and then you should have said, Puente can't make it, you know, he's not going to be able to play. So Nicky, you know, he wants you to go and take over, play for him. So, and then other than that, Johnny Rodriguez was also playing bongos, and Johnny would call me and say, listen, I won't be able to play bongos because I got to go somewhere else or something like that. So I would play bongos with Tito Puente and substitute for Johnny. So it was various times that I would do the substitute.
It's funny because, like, in one of the films, Tito says, the MC says, the three greatest timbaleros, because the three of you are doing solos together.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tito comes out and says, we've only been rehearsing for 20 years. And when I looked at that, I see that there's Caco, and Caco comes from the Alegre All-Star days, back in the early 60s, when they were jamming. You came from the Fania All-Star age, which he used to call the Fania All-Stars the Funny All-Stars. He always was like, well, you know, they were all, it was like the band leaders and then their favorite singer and instrumentalist. And it's hard to get those band leaders, all those egos in one place and have them, I mean, you were there. You could talk about that better than me.
When we did a lot of the shows with the Fania in Madison Square Garden, big places, but the thing is that then Puente, they would call Puente to come and play. So he would take the solo, and then I would play a solo with him. And there's a great shot where I went like, every time I got dressed to play with the Fania, I would go what was happening during that year. Like Muhammad Ali was the champion and all that stuff, so I went as a boxer. And we played, and the thing is that I had no shirt on. I just had the boxing trunks, the boxing shoes, and there's a picture of me and Puente, and I have no shirt on, and he has a suit on, and
Puente always had a suit.
Yeah. So that was a great moment, and people like that. They get turned out so much.
What would you say would be the most important thing that you learned from Tito Puente as a percussionist?
There was always something new that he would do. It wasn't boring. It was not boring. And he had such a direction. He knew that instrument. I mean, like the blood that runs through our veins. It was his expression. That was his language. His alter ego.
His alter ego was a drum. Wow, yeah.
I mean, it was to watch him, and he loved the audience. He loved to be watched. Who wouldn't love to be watched when he was an entertainer, and then also because but a little bit going back, the thing is when I found out about his career, and I didn't know that he danced, that he was a dancer, and then all those instruments that he also played. And one thing I remember also, he had an office with Charlie Palmieri in Broadway, 52nd, 60. So I would go up there because Jose Covello's office was there too. And I would always go to their office. And Tito was there. So we would always have a conversation. They were sitting down, going back, reminiscing old stories and stuff like that. And I would just like absorbing everything that they were talking about. And what about you, Nick? What are you doing? And but then I was always doing something. And I started, I was with Eddie Palmieri, but I was always going to the office. I was just all over the place with the music.
Thank you for that. Tito Puente was, he was the king. He was masterful. He was the greatest. He really was. Multi-instrumentalist. And he was funny. He was funny. Do we want to take some questions now? Thank you. Is someone going to come with a microphone for, there's questions here?
Gonna ask whoever have a question to come down and do the question from here instead of being walking all around.
How you doing, panel? My name is Dean Vasquez, and Aurora, you mentioned Boys Harbor, and it's really interesting. And I would like to know how the impact that Boys Harbor has had on Latin music in New York, in the United States, throughout the world. Can you please speak, Oreste, Nicky, and Frankie?
The harbor was like a second home to me. Thank God for the harbor. I'd probably be one of those kids in prison, seriously, with these streets back then, seriously. But with people who I was hanging out with, always in the streets, in the corners, etc. But when I came to the harbor, I was able to come in after school, from school 3 o'clock, 3:40 something, take the 6 train over from Fordham all the way down, come over here, straight to the harbor or Manhattan. And to be there every day, taking classes, everything was a total privilege and honor to be able to have that access to see rehearsals happening from El Canario to the Mambo Legends Orchestra.
Mark Anthony
rehearsed there. You name it, you just go in one day thinking you're just gonna take a class. Next thing you know, you're meeting people like Nicky Marrero, Frankie Morales rehearsing downstairs with his band, and you see Frankie Vasquez going over here with Solos en Barrio rehearsing upstairs, and Jordi Delgado is doing a class downstairs, Jose Madera's upstairs on the 3rd floor. It was that every day, and I thank all of them who has helped me in the school too. That school to this day has helped me. Camilo as well. Luisito Gomez, who's actually a pianist, who's doing now his own band, Calle 107. If you've seen that around, check him out, a monster. And Camilo again with Palmieri, and again, the harbor was a safe haven, somewhere where it was like a second home. You see a whole bunch of family members, uncles, cousins, all that. That was our teachers and the students, and just hanging out. You forget it's 9 o'clock p.m. and you have to be home at 7 or 8 o'clock, and it's like, oh my God, I gotta go. Mom, I'm just in the school. Don't worry, I'm okay. And then I have to tell them, look, George, can you tell my mom I was here?
And the school was blessed by Tito Puente.
Yes,
because he gave it a lot of support.
Yes.
And that's what happened with the school. But let's move on and take some questions about Tito Puente.
I just wanted to add real quick about that the reason why I had that access was because there was a scholarship under Tito Puente's name. Right? It was a Tito Puente scholarship program, and I was one of the students, one of the alumni, as well as Camilo and Luisito and many of us as well. So thank you again for Tito for having the opportunity to have the Boys and Girls Harbor. Thank you, Dean, for that. And for us to be able to do what we do today, so the harbor was a big part of it. Tito Puente, thank you. Definitely.
Wow, so my question is more about music, but I grew up on the Lower East Side on 13th Street, and there was this wonderful event that was done there with all these artists that kind of promoted our Latin thing. Like, I always wonder how all you musicians, you guys are too young, you are definitely too young for that, I believe.
Are you talking about the Our Latin Thing movie?
Yeah, like how did you get all these, how did you become part of that? How did that happen?
I can talk a little bit to that because that was kind of Larry Harlow's idea.
Oh.
And he had a friend who was a director named Leon Gass. And actually Leon Gass had only done commercials. But they were, according to Larry Harlow, they used to have these Thursday night poker games at his house. And they wanted to know how to get the music bigger. And Harlow came out and said, let's do a movie. And he brought in his friend who had only done, so they had no script. So they decided to take it to the streets. And Harlow, if you notice, in that Lower East Side.
Why that block?
Because that was the place that they could set up, and right next door, Imai Miranda's mother lived there, and they were able to put the electricity through her window because she was on the first floor. So I have to tell you, our Latin thing, even though it got criticized by the conservative, non-profit Latinos coming up because they thought it was too gritty, it was real. They put the camera on our community, it was real. Please see it on, you can see it on YouTube.
Yeah,
but our Latin thing really gives you a bird's eye view of what was going on from the Lower East Side to East Harlem to the Bronx. And it was a movement. It was a movement of sound and power. And even though we were young, Tito Puente had to be part of that. So he would come in, he would jam. He was part of that whole movement. And I have to say, music has a power. When you're walking down the street and you can feel the street vibrating, and then you look and in an empty lot is Tito Puente and his entire orchestra. That's power.
Yes.
Someone had another question?
Yes, I do. Buenas noches. Yo tengo una pregunta para Nicky Marrero sobre Tito Puentes. I do have a question to Nicky Marrero about Tito Puentes. I learned to love you in YouTube. When you go into the timbales, it's amazing. Aprendí a amarte en YouTube. Cuando tú vas dentro de los tribales es emocionante. Me recuerda mucho en los años que yo vine aquí a este país en el 93 y me encontré con la salsa, me enamoré de la salsa y me enamoré de los timbales, especialmente de Tito Puente, pero tú me recuerdas tanto. Y cuando tú dices esa energía y que él era un comediante, yo te veo a ti, veo a mi padrastro en la etapa que yo vine a este país. Y por eso te pregunto, ¿dónde nació esa raíz de ti, de ser ese comediante, esa persona inteligente, emocionante, que estudió, pero también sabe los timbales y se va al barrio y entra a la raíz de la música? Where do you find that into your roots? They mix with Tito Puentes. As a comedian, as I feel that you are as well, because you got that energy, that vibrant, that gets you into the emotion, right? It reminds me of my stepfather when I came from Dominican Republic into 1992, 1993, and I fell in love with salsa in the Bronx, in the streets. Where do you find that? How can you mix that? I don't know, I have too many questions, sorry.
Well, no, thank you for your question. Well, like I said, studying Puente and being a friend, a very, very particular friend of his, I was like his protege. And he would tell me funny things, funny stories, or relate to other musicians, and or he heard what had happened recently. There was always something funny. So looking at him and how he was so entertaining, just besides playing, but just in his conversation, always fit to any circumstances of when we met. And he was always giving me advice. That was very particular about him and me. He would always tell me, hey, listen, I want you to know that if you ever find that you're doing something wrong, you're going to hear from me, okay? And it's true.
Él daba muchos consejos.
Yeah,
Y el que no coge consejo no llega viejo.
a lot of advice because he wanted.
Nicky, ese encuentro con África, después que vuelve de África con la Fania, ¿qué tú traes de allá para acá? ¿Y qué te hace diferencia ese encuentro con África?
Well, I mean, to hear authentically the tribes from there, the Zulus, the Tutsis, the different tribes, and the drumming. So the drumming, the thing is, trying to make sense of what are they playing, how do they play it, and the syncopations of rhythms, and that I would try to imitate it. It says in the timbales, I would try to imitate it in the bongo, the congas, but I brought that back with me, and especially when they made the film when we went to Africa, and I would see it again. It reminded me, so it reminded me, and the rhythms would come through what I experienced in Africa.
Wow.
Where, one more question? I just wanted to say that aside from being one of the greatest musicians in the world, I know Tito Puente wanted to play his timbales on the moon, but aside from being one of the greatest musicians in the world, you can see how he affected the generations after him with all of us here. And not only that, the women, I mean, he took like a personal interest in me, and he would sit me down, and I had an ear for music, and he knew that, and he would tell me things like, oh, yeah, Larry Harlow has a great band, but if you stand next to him, you'll get pregnant, so be careful. He would tell me things like this. But then we'd sit down and listen to music. I mean, his ear, and he would push me, and I remember one time we were in Madison Square Garden, and he just wanted me to come out and sing coro with him. I was terrified. I was like, no! But I went out and danced without Santiago. But he was a caring person, and he wanted this music to continue. And one of the things he would tell me, he loved how I wrote, and he would tell me, hang in there, don't be afraid of these guys. You're controversial. Write the good and write the bad. But he told me, but you need to write because there's too many, and I hate to say this, but at that time he said, there's too many white people writing our history. He said, you know this history. And he loved that I loved the Ibero music. And he said, you know this music, you know the history. We have to write the history of our people, of our music, not other people. And I'll never forget that Tito Puente told me that. And today we have a lot of people revising the music. But it goes, Tito Puente was the root. He was the greatest. Joe?
He wasn't the queen. Anyway, we could talk about Tito Puente. First of all, I want to thank the panel. I remember the chancellor of CUNY, Felix Matos, asked me about Tito Puente. I said I could talk about Tito Puente for the next 10 years. So could Aurora, most of us, especially myself that was around him. I want to give you one tidbit that Aurora said about women.
Oh yeah, he told me about him too.
Tito recorded more women singers than any other band leader in the history of Latin music. And let me give you another tidbit. Today they call it, what do they call it? LGBTQ. Tito was the first musician to record a transsexual, El Lupo, who imitated La Lupe.
I have to correct you. It was Johnny Rodriguez who first recorded a whole album of drag queens.
No.
Yes, in 65.
Let me finish what I'm saying. What did I just finish saying? Listen to what I said. Tito Puente was the first to record a transsexual. Aurora's correcting me and said, no, Johnny Rodriguez. I'm not disputing that. I said he was the first to record a transsexual.
Argue with Joe.
Yeah. Johnny Rodriguez did record it. It's a record.
Yes.
And they were transsexual.
And so did Tito Scotti, another musician that Tito Puente recorded.
But we all did this before it was a trend here. Before that riot downtown in...
Well, Johnny had the first, we saw the movie with Robin Williams and Nathan Lane.
Yes, yes.
Johnny Rodriguez had the first transsexual place in Puerto Rico called El Cotorrito.
No, Cotorrito, yes.
Anyway, folks, I understand there's supposed to be refreshments outside. The exhibit is outside, which I am the director. I put that together with Jose Encarnacion, Elena Martinez, were very instrumental in helping me put that exhibit. And furthermore, that exhibit is the only exhibit on the School of Higher Learning in the United States and possibly the planet on a gentleman called Ernest Anthony
Puente Jr.
And if I could just say one thing, you want to hear Puente's music? Tomorrow, Frankie Morales is going to have a gig celebrating Hail to the King. I also have an article online on Medium that's called An Audience with the King. You could look it up, and that has a lot of spicy information about Larry Harlow and all the artists, and Tito Puente, because when you have an interview, you don't have a meeting with the king. You have an audience with the king. And it's called Meeting Tito Puente before there was a Me Too movement. So you can look that up. And with that, we have some refreshing.
Also, in May, we're doing a show. We're on tour. We just did Puerto Rico, and it's a tribute to Tito Puente.
Oh yes.
And it's
yes.
me, Tito's son, Tito Jr., and Ronnie Puente is going to be there too, and Oreste, and the Dueño, and we're doing the Lake Lehman College coming up in May.
And on Saturday, Nicky's going to be playing at the Point. So you can go see him and check him out.
Tribute celebration with Nicky Marrero at the Point in the Bronx.
They're going to be giving him a tribute because Nicky Marrero is a living legend.
Yes.
Can I say something? Frankie, tomorrow is Tito Puente's birthday. And on my behalf, I'll be performing tomorrow at the Swing 46. And I would like for you guys to come down. It's gonna be all Tito Puente music. And it's gonna be a good way to celebrate his birthday.
At what time?
Showtime will be at 8:30. And it's Swing 46. 46 will be between 8th and 9th. And it's gonna be Tito Puente music. El agua limpia todo, niña y señora, bamba quiere complicación, tremendo guaguancó, bururu arara, como está bien. So those are all the classics. So you guys want to come down and listen to some real music, great music, Mambo the way Puente played it, and he put it in me.
Yes.
I hope to see you guys tomorrow.
Don't miss it. Don't miss it.
And if you go on YouTube, I have a podcast series on YouTube called 100 Years of Latin Music. It's an 8-part series. We have 3 parts up now. And I'm doing it with a young lady who is 17 years old and is a Latin music student, enthusiast. I've never met a young person who is so involved in Latin music. Her name is Anani, and she is a podcaster, a young Taina podcaster. So we're doing this series on the history of Latin music. So we're up to the 40s now, and we're taking it decade by decade because Latin music was first recorded in New York City.
Wow.
So,
Joe's going everywhere, yeah.
let's go outside. Let's follow Joe,
Yes.
follow the leader,
Thank you all.
and let's go party.
Thank you.
De Tito Puente.
Vaya.
I want to photo with you. Yeah. Tony.